Hello, I'm Clint Walker, and this is Real Estate Appraiser Secrets. And today, we're going to be talking about how your appraiser handles a property with atypical characteristics, and specifically, how we handle one that doesn't have air conditioning or central heat. So this question came to me twice last week from two different friends involved in a transaction, one a lender, one an agent. Because they're dealing with a property that was built in very recently, actually, in just right before 2020, I guess. And the seller, I don't think this person who's a seller now is actually the person who built it, but maybe they are. Anyway, when they built it, they elected to not put in central heat and air in this property. I don't know why. In Middle Tennessee, it's very uncommon to not have air conditioning in your property because it's really humid here and hot in the summer. And on the subject of heat, there are minimum requirements for heat, which is that properties have to have a permanent heat source. And moreover, they have to have a permanent heat source that is automatically controlled and fueled. So something like a wood-burning stove or a wood-burning fireplace is not sufficient because the FHA and codes departments and other things, that heat has to keep happening while a person is asleep at night, because extremely cold temperatures, if the house were to get extremely cold, that could be a safety hazard, a health hazard. So it has to have an automated source, and from what I understand as I'm reading up on trying to answer this question, because I had to do some research to answer this question, because this was a weird one. The mortgage loan originator who asked me this question, he sees hundreds of properties a year. I see hundreds of properties a year, and this just does not come up very often. Okay, it's extremely weird one. So, on the subject of that heating, the fuel needs to be automatic, but also it needs to have like an automatic thermostat. So really, just a basic gas fireplace where you're turning the fire on and off to provide heat is really not sufficient in and of itself. So it needs to have those things as sort of a minimum standard to qualify for most financing, definitely FHA. But then there's another standard here that is sort of conformity to the market, which your appraiser is going to need to be able to demonstrate in order for your loan to go through on most loan types. Now, again, as I already said, this is a very atypical situation with this property not having central heat and air, or even, now mini splits, which are ductless systems, are becoming more common. And so if this property had mini splits, I would still call that atypical, but at least it's a permanent heat source, permanent air source, and they're becoming more common. This property, I think, was built with spray foam insulation, and maybe that's why they elected to not put anything in it. But we'll never know. So the question that I was originally asked was, will this property go FHA? And I think, or conventional. I really don't think it will go FHA. I'm not sure if we'll find out. The parties might be proceeding to try to float it and see what happens. But it was interesting that the listing agent on this property is telling the buyer's agent that there should be no problem. It'll definitely go FHA. We've already had an appraisal, and we were able to get a copy of the previous appraisal to see how that appraiser treated it, and they really did a pretty good job. But you might find it interesting that if you've been in one of my classes before, a lot of times when I get asked these questions about really weird properties, I bring up that there's an underwriter involved in every lending transaction, and that person really has the final say. They're really just relying on the appraiser to go out, report on what they see, find comps to bracket these characteristics, and send it in and let the underwriter make the final call. So we got a copy of this previous appraisal report, and the appraiser had done a good job, and they had done exactly that. They'd said multiple times in the report that the property does not have central heating and air, that that's an atypical characteristic for properties in the subject's market. They had determined an adjustment, so if properties did have heating and air, they considered those, or central heating and air, they considered those superior, and they made a negative adjustment on those sales for this property not having it. But they also pointed out that codes requirements in this jurisdiction required the property to have a permanent heat source, and this didn't conform. So that sort of goes back to this being a little bit of a head scratcher as contemporary construction that this appraiser is saying doesn't conform to the local codes. I'm not sure how they ever got a certificate of occupancy, if that's the case. So, that's a good bit of information to glean from this appraisal report. But then they went and they found another property that the listing said didn't have central heat and air. They included that in the report to bracket it. And I want to bring that up because you might, let's say you're the agents involved on this and you get this appraisal report back and you've got some weird property in there that doesn't match up. It's not really an apples to apples comparison to the subject in any other way, and you're scratching your head about why is this property included in the report. It might be, this property could be, or the subject could be maybe like a $500,000 or $600,000 house, and you've got this one weird $300,000 sale in there, and you don't know why it's in there. Well, that could be because the appraiser could not bracket the lack of HVAC in any other way except to use this seemingly random property that also doesn't have it. That's just bracketing the one element, and then we could adjust for all the other ones. And that's kind of what the appraiser did in this one. I don't recall all the details of that comp, if it was a bad comp at all, or how much cheaper or more expensive it was than the subject, but just sort of a little side note for you that we have to bracket these little idiosyncrasies like that, and it could be necessary to do that with a otherwise not super similar property. So the appraiser did all of that stuff, reported on everything they knew about the property and sent it in, and I suppose by virtue of this seller living in the house now, it went through, it got financed. So I believe that was probably conventional financing on that one, but it may have been FHA. Maybe that's why the listing agent's saying it should go FHA. I don't know. But anyway, the whole thing is pretty interesting and informative, because it sort of just goes to show that the aspect of what the appraiser does that is mostly reporting and letting the underwriter and the lender and their specific lending criteria be the final judge. When you come up with these weird ones, maybe not every lender can do the loan, but sometimes you need to go to a local bank, or if it's raw land or got a raw land component, maybe you need to go to somewhere like Farm Credit that can lend on raw land. There's options out there, and so don't get frustrated or feel defeated just because you can't use the lender that you use for everything else on a particular property. As agents, sometimes we just got to put in a little more legwork and find the answer, because the answer's out there. So I hope that's helpful. If you run into a weird one like that, we would love to help you on the front end. You can find us at truepointappraisals.com. We can do a pre-listing appraisal or professional measurement. and consultation, and help you sort that out and navigate some of those hurdles before you really get into the weeds of it. So thank you as always for watching. Really appreciate it, and I will catch you next time.